Hello friends, this is my final video regarding literary terms and concepts. We have a 40 literary terms in unit number 4 of the paper Introduction to Literary Criticism. In continuous 3 lectures, I have completed near about 30 literary terms, and in this lecture, I am going to complete the remaining literary terms from unit number 4. The first term is satire. In common usage, satire means the use of humor, irony, exaggeration, or ridicule to expose and criticize people's stupidity and vices. This is the common definition. This is the common illustration about the term satire. In criticism, satire is the literary art of diminishing or derogating a subject by making it ridiculous and evoking toward it attitudes of amusement, contempt, scorn, and indignation. Satire differs from that comic in that comedy evokes laughter mainly as an end in itself, while satire derides and evokes laughter as a weapon. Friends, there is a basic difference between the comedy and satire. Satire especially meant for to ridicule to, to ridicule or criticize people's stupidity and vices. It is used as a weapon, but comedy is used as a amusement, entertainment, or to create a laughter. The target of satire may be an institution, a nation, or the entire human race. With the help of satire, author tries to ridicule or criticize people's stupidity or vices. But in comedy, the dramatist he uses comedy to create laughter for the amusement and for the entertainment. Broadly, satire is divided into two types. Number one is a formal or direct satire, and second one is a indirect satire. We will see one by one. Number one is the formal or direct satire. In formal and direct satire, the speaker of the eye in the poem speaks either to the reader, as in a Pope's moral essays, or to a character in the poem itself, as in a Pope's epistle to Dr. Arbuthnot. Here, friends, in a formal or direct satire, the poet himself represent as in the form of first person, and he speaks in the form of a speaker, and he himself tries to ridicule or criticize the vices of himself or uh, or another characters. The next type of a satire is the indirect satire. The indirect satire is not an address, but rather a narrative. It consists of extended dialogues and debates, often conducted at a banquet or party. Friends, in indirect satire, we will get the examples through the dialogues, through the debates. Means this form is not in the form of address, rather, we get these examples in the form of a narration, in the form of a dialogue, in the form of a conversation. Here, we have examples like Thomas Love Peacock's Nightmare Abbey and Huxley's Point Counterpoint. These two are excellent examples of indirect satire. The next term is related to poetry, that is onomatopoeia. In common words, onomatopoeia means the formation of a word from a sound associated with what is named. Onomatopoeia is a figure of speech in which the sound echoes the sense. It designates a word or a combination of words whose sound seems to resemble closely the sound it denotes. For example, buzz, rattle, hiss, and bang. Friends, onomatopoeia means nothing but a sense of a sound. Suppose we take an example, the chirping of sparrows. Friends, in the word chirping, we get a sense of a sound. Suppose we take another example, barking of a dog. In the word barking, we get a sense of a sound. Third example, buzzing of bees. In the word buzzing, we get a sense of sound. Means in a short, the words like a chirping, buzzing, barking, then rattling. Okay, these are the examples of onomatopoeia. Means in onomatopoeia, we get a sense of a sound, so it is also called as a echoism. Here is some lines from the poem The Charge of the Light Brigade by Lord Tennyson. The lines are as cannon to right of them, cannon to left of them, cannon in front of them volleyed and thundered. Here in this line, in these lines, we get some words regarding onomatopoeia. The next term is elegy. Elegy is also associated with the poetical section. In Greek and Roman literature, elegy denoted any poem written in elegiac meter is called elegy. Friends, there is a basic difference in modern usage and in ancient usage. In Greek and Roman literature, any poem written in elegiac meter, that is alternating hexameter and pentameter lines, is called as a elegy. But in modern literature, in modern usage, a poem of a serious reflection, typically a lament for the dead, is called as a elegy. Means there is a basic difference between the modern usage and ancient usage. The term also used to refer the subject matter of a change and loss frequently expressed in the elegiac verse form, especially in complaint about love. In the 17th century, the term began to be limited to its common present usage, a formal and sustained lament in verse for the death of particular person, usually ending in a consolation. Friends, any poem written about a serious topic, serious reflection, and typically a lament for the dead is called as elegy. But in a Roman usage, in a Roman and Greek literature, any poem written in elegiac meter is called as elegy. This is the basic difference between the modern usage and ancient usage. Here we have some examples of elegies. The first poem is The Pearl, is an example of elegy from medieval poem. Second poem is In Memoriam on the Death of Arthur Hallam, is a fine example of elegy. This poem, this elegy, is written by Tennyson in the memory of his near and dear friend Arthur Hallam. Third example is W.H. Audens in memory of W.B. Yeats. Friends, W.H. Auden wrote or composed this poem in the memory of his near and dear friend W.B. Yeats. This is the elegy. The next term is dirge. In common words, dirge is a poem or a lament for the dead, especially one forming the part of a funeral rite. Dirge is a song of grief, lamentation, mourning, which is a short and not binding to the convention of a elegy. There is a basic difference between the elegy and dirge. Dirge doesn't follow the convention of elegy, but in elegy, the poet he has to follow the convention. The convention is that elegiac meter, alternating hexameter and pentameter lines. In a simple words, dirge is a short poem, and it is a song of grief, lamentation, or mourning on the occasion of the funeral procession. Here we have an example of a dirge, the song sung by Ariel in William Shakespeare's famous drama The Tempest is a fine example of the dirge. The lines of the song is full fathom 5 thy father lies. This is an example of a dirge. The next term is a ode. Ode is also associated with the poetry section. In a simple word, ode is a lyric poem, typically one in the form of an address to a particular subject written in an irregular meter. In a common words, ode means lyric poem. It is a written in the form of address, and third thing is a written in an irregular meter. Ode is a long lyric poem that is serious in subject matter and treatment, elevated in style, and elaborate in its stanza structure. Here, in this definition, we have features about the ode. Number one thing is that ode should be serious in a subject matter and at the same time in a treatment. Second thing is that ode should be elevated in a style, and third thing is that ode should be elaborate in its stanza structure. In the beginning, I have already cleared that ode is a lyric poem. It is always in the form of address, and third thing is that it is written in irregular verse. But in this definition, we have three features, and these three features is very important in concern of the concept ode. It is often in the form of an address. Like the lyric, ode is Greek in origin. The Greek poet Pindar popularized it. His odes were modeled on the songs by the chorus in a Greek drama. Well, we have two kinds of ode. The first one is a Pindaric ode, and second one is a Horatian ode. Here we will see why it is called as a Pindaric ode. The Pindaric ode, also called as Dorian ode and regular ode. The Pindaric ode is named after the Greek poet Pindar, usually written in a triads composed of two stanzas called strophe and antistrophe, followed by an epode different in shape. In a short, the Dorian ode or regular ode is called as a Pindaric ode because it was popularized by Greek poet Pindar, so it is commonly known as a Pindaric ode. Here We have two examples of a Pindari code. Number one is the progress of poesy, and second one is the bard. Both the poems composed by Thomas Gray. This is the Pindari code. Now, the second type of ode is called as Horatian ode. It is called as Horatian ode because it was popularized by great poet Horace. The Horatian ode, also called as Lesbian ode, is named after the Latin poet Horace. His odes were monostrophic and homostrophic, that is composed of any number of stanzas, all of the same shape. Here is one example. Ode to Simplicity is an fine example of a Horatian ode. In a simple language, Horatian ode is called as a lesbian ode because it was developed in the region of Lesbos. And the Lesbos ode is also called as a Horatian ode because it was popularized by Latin poet Horace. Then third kind of ode is the irregular ode, and this ode was introduced by Abraham Cowley in 1656. This ode developed by Abraham Cowley, who imitated the Pindaric style and manner but discarded the strophic triad. In his ode, each stanza found its own pattern of varying line, length, and number of lines and rhythm scheme. Here is one example from the irregular section. Irregular ode. Ode on intimations of immortality is an fine example of an irregular word. Here, in irregular ode, Abraham Cowley, he does not follow the Pindaric style. He himself developed the new style and he used the own pattern of varying lines, lengths, number of lines, and rhyme scheme or rhythm scheme. So it is called as a irregular ode. The next term is a ballad. Ballad is also associated with the poetical section. In a common usage, ballad means a poem or song narrating a story in a short stanzas. Ballad is literally a dancing song. A song to be sung by dancers now means a short tale told in a light, rapid meter and in the simplest language. Repetition and direct speech are characteristics of a ballad. Okay. In a simple word, ballad is a poem or a song narrating a story in a short stanzas. Okay, ballad is a dancing song, and this song sung by dancers. In a ballad, singer tries to narrate a short tale. Okay, ballad is also divided in some categories. The first one is a popular ballad. The popular ballad is a song transmitted orally which tells a story. Probably the original version was composed by a single author, but he is unknown. Typically, the popular ballad is dramatic and impersonal. The narrator begins with the climatic episode, tells the story tersely by a means of action and dialogue, and tells it without the expression of personal attitudes or feelings. Here, in popular ballad, this kind of ballad is transmitted one generation to another generation with the help of only oral tradition. Okay, and in a ballad, the poet tries to narrate a small story, a short story, and that story in a short stanzas. Now the next term is epic. The term epic is also associated with the drama and poetry. In a simple words, epic means a long poem, typically one derived from ancient oral tradition narrating the deeds and adventures of heroic or legendary figures or the past history of a nation. Epic is also called as a heroic poem. The term epic is a long narrative poem on a serious subject told in a formal and elevated style and centered on a heroic figure on whose action depends the fate of a tribe, nation or human race. There is a standard distinction between traditional and literary epics. Okay, here the term epic is also called as a heroic poem because epic narrating the deeds and adventures of a heroic or legendary figures from history. Okay, here we have two types of epics. The first one is a traditional epic. It is also called as folk epics and primary epic. Traditional epic were written versions of what had originally been oral poems about a tribal or a national hero during a warlike period. Iliad and Odyssey are fine examples of a traditional epic. The second type of epic is a literary epics were composed by individual poetic craftsmen in deliberate imitation of the traditional form. John Milton's Paradise Lost is an example of a literary epic. The next term is a mock epic. Mock epic is a parody of the epic form. Okay, mock epic is the parody of the epic form. The mock epic can be defined as a work in which a trivial subject is made ridiculous by being treated with the elaborate and dignified devices of the epic. It is originated in a classical literature and practiced by neoclassical writers in the late 17th and early 18th centuries. In a short, mock epic is nothing but parody of the epic form, and this form was popularized by neoclassical writers in the 17th century and early 18th century. Examples include The Rape of the Lock and Dunciad by Alexander Pope. Here we have famous two examples from mock epic. The first one is The Rape of the Lock and the second one is the Dunciad. Both the poem composed by great neoclassical poet Alexander Pope. The term mock heroic is often applied to other dignified poetic forms which are purposely mismatched to the lowly subject. For example, Thomas Gray's Ode on the Death of Favorite Cat. The next term is heroic couplet. Heroic couplet is a pair of rhymed iambic pentameter lines. Here couplet means a stanza for two lines. And why it is called as heroic? It is called heroic because it was usual form for English epic poetry which dealt with heroic deeds. In the last term, I have already cleared that the term epic specially narrating the deeds and adventures of heroic or legendary figures. So, this couplet, this form of poetry, is used to deal with the deeds of and adventures of heroic and legendary figures. So it is called as a heroic. This verse form was introduced into English poetry by Geoffrey Chaucer in his The Legend of Good Women and most of the Canterbury Tales. In neoclassical poetry, there is usually a pause at the end of first line and the termination of a syntactical unit at the end of the second. Such unit is called as a closed heroic couplet. The last term from unit number 4, that is the narcissism. Narcissism, in a simple word, narcissism means excessive interest in or admiration of oneself and one's physical appearance. The term narcissism refers excessive interest in oneself or one's physical appearance. Narcissism is the pursuit of gratification from vanity or egoistic admiration of one's own attributes. The term originated from Greek mythology, where the young Narcissus fell in love with his own image reflected in a pool of water. The term narcissism is a very interesting term. Narcissism means nothing but excessive interest in or admiration of oneself or one's physical appearance. This concept is related to psychology. Narcissism is a concept in psychoanalytical theory, which was introduced in Sigmund Freud's essay on narcissism in 1914. It is also considered a social or cultural problem. It is one of the three dark triadic personality traits, the others being psychopathy and Machiavellism. Okay, the narcissism, this term was introduced by great psychologist Sigmund Freud in his essay on narcissism. With this, I am looking forward to see you again. Bye bye.